Hi, and welcome to Changemakers with Eleanor, the podcast where we dive into the lives and lessons of those who are making a difference. I'm your host, Eleanor Baggaley, and in each episode we bring you inspiring stories from leaders, coaches, and people who are not just dreaming of change, but making it happen. Whether they're penning their first book, working in their community, or leading a revolution in their industry, you'll get a first-hand look at how they're shaping the world. If you're looking to leave a mark or simply love a good story about modern-day heroes, you've come to the right place. Here, we're all about changing the world, whether that's one person's world or the world in general. So grab your notebook or just a comfortable seat and let's explore these fascinating journeys together. Don't forget to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts to ensure you never miss an episode. Let's go change the world together. So I'm really excited for this podcast episode to introduce my very lovely friend, Lorna Vyse. So Lorna, would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hello, thank you very much for inviting me. So my name's Lorna Vyse and I live in Norfolk, which is really sunny today because it's a lovely spring day today. And I've sort of been working with children and young people in sort of youth and community work for about 30 odd years. And more recently, for the last 20, I've been specialising in supporting children and young people around serious illness, death, dying and bereavement. So really, I'm sort of coming to you today with one of those people that always talks about death and dying all the time. And I should say, and I also write children's bereavement support books around that as well. So that's how we've met, wasn't it? So
It was indeed, yeah.
You've been helping me with my journey along the way.
Yes, and it's been very exciting and interesting to kind of see where it's come from, where it's been going, and where it's potentially going in the future. So yeah, is it hard to deal with kind of death and bereavement on a daily basis?
I think society doesn't really like talking about death and dying. So I suppose when I think about my early career, I mean, I didn't want to talk about it at all. And if someone died or someone started to talk to me about serious illness or funerals, whatever, I'd just switch off and was like, oh, I don't want to talk about that. But I think that's where my sort of level of understanding and passion has sort of come out, because I was working with children and young people and realised that we don't talk to them particularly well about all of those subjects. And so they don't really understand things. So now, having gone and learned and trained myself and thought about how we can support children around something that's so natural, isn't it? It's a life cycle.
Yeah.
That I don't find it that difficult. But what I probably do need to think about sometimes is that other people might still find it quite difficult. So they might ignore me at a party or a meeting or something because I talk about it.
Don't talk to the death lady.
Don't talk to the death lady. And she must always be wearing black, which I am today. But I think it's one of those things that I don't find it a challenge to talk about now. I think I really accept it as part of our life cycles. And there's a really good piece of work that talks about when a baby is born and someone has a midwife, and we talk about it when the person is pregnant and the baby's born. We talk about everything to do with the baby, don't we? Oh, have you got the room sorted? If it's a boy or a girl? Is everything going all right? How did your antenatal class go? All of those things. But when we get to the end of life, we don't like to have the same sort of conversations. So I think that's one of the things that I've been working hard on, is just to go, do you know what? It's all right. It's okay to have these conversations. I think one of the things I do need to be aware of, though, is, you do need to make sure you've got outlets, because otherwise your life could feel quite dark all of the time. But that's just about well-being and looking after yourself, like most people who work in sort of different roles and responsibilities. You do have to look after yourself, don't you? And I'm very mindful that if I'm probably talking about death and dying quite a lot, then I might need to go and do something to remind myself that I'm still alive and go off and enjoy life.
And I think from what I know of you, I would say that you are probably one of the most upbeat, positive, happy people that I have had the pleasure of knowing as well. So yeah, I think it's probably fair to say that you do counter it quite well.
Well, I think you have to, and I think, thank you for that lovely little sort of scope of what I'm about. But yeah, I do really try hard to sort of keep upbeat, because what my passion is about supporting people at the most difficult time, and I almost see that as a privilege.
Yeah.
I see if I can help and support a family or a child or a young person in particular around something that's so tender and delicate, that's a privilege, isn't it? And so most of the time I
Yeah.
am going to be upbeat.
And I guess not on anywhere near the same level that you do, but when I was teaching, I had a 14-year-old student who passed away very quickly from a brain tumour. And because it was so quickly, that was actually really hard for the rest of the students in the whole school. It was a really small, close-knit, rural community school, and it did really affect them. And well, it really affected me. I was one of the last people to have seen her. And not that I was a professional in any way, shape, or form in terms of dealing with bereavement, but it was just trying to kind of do something to talk about it, to keep her memory alive as well, but to actually give them a little bit of normality and to try and kind of keep that balance when on that Monday morning back in school was far from normal. I've never seen a school in total silence before for an entire day. It was the most eerie feeling. So yeah, I guess very small snapshot into what you see in that giving back and just giving that safe space for people, for children who are grieving.
And it sounds like just literally just on that point, isn't it? That's the most important thing, isn't it? That we just give children, young people, a safe space to explore it. And people go, oh, I don't want them to be sad. I don't want them to be upset. But they are, because, one of their friends has died. So what we
Yeah.
just need to do is just hold that space for them and do it in a safe way and go, ask them, give them choice, give them empowerment. Do you understand what's happening? What would you like to happen? And you can't go far wrong if we do that.
And that's what we did. I mean, as a school, we asked her. So my classroom was a space that she felt safe. She would kind of come to me and do a lot there. So I had a really good relationship with her
Yeah.
peer group as well. So, and I had her class essentially on that first Monday morning, and we just let the kids. I just told my department, we're not doing maths in this lesson.
Yeah.
We're here for her year group, and we made like memory paper chains, and so we were all writing memories on these bits of paper and connecting them together. And my room kind of became a bit of a shrine, which was hard for me because I was seeing all these things all day, every day, but it was what the kids needed. And actually, the thing that I felt was really important was that the kids could see that I was upset as well.
Yeah. Yep.
And we did loads. Like we had a memory bench, and there was all sort of trees and all sorts for it because we asked the kids what they wanted to do.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Modeling grief is so, having a role model as an adult that goes, I'm upset too. This is really difficult. There's no right or wrong way to grieve, but if we can allow adults and give them the tools and to feel more comfortable about having those conversations and allowing that and role modeling. I mean, one of the things I hate more than anything is one of those little personal gripes in my work is, but I understand where it comes from, is where adults will say to me, oh, a child, they can't, there's no way they're going to the funeral because they'll see everybody upset. And I just always want to go, yes, but the child's upset too, because it's exactly that. If we model grief,
and
we
I
can
guess they
help.
need to be able to say goodbye as well,
Yeah,
don't they?
yeah. And a child might choose not to go to a funeral, and that's fine. But give them knowledge, understanding of what's actually going to happen, and then give them the choice and empower them. But they're still going to be upset regardless of wherever they are. So that's sort of where my life's works come in. It's about just it helping adults to support children and helping children directly to go, well, what do I want, and what's the expectation,
Yeah.
and all of those things. So when we talk about my work being really sort of dark, it's not really, is it? It's just about empowering young people and giving them a voice when something really difficult happens in their life.
Yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, I've always given my children, not that I've been to a massive amount of funerals, but I've always given them that choice, even from, I think when my grandma died, I can't think how old Maya was, but they were fairly young, but I gave them the choice to kind of come along to those. Less so probably with Ava in November, and that was purely from because obviously she has Down syndrome, that she didn't really understand the death at that point. So she was at the wake afterwards, but she didn't come to kind of the actual funeral bit. And I think I totally agree. I think giving children that opportunity to deal with things in their own way is really important.
Yeah.
So obviously you mentioned that you've got your books. You've got quite a few books now, haven't you, Lorna? So do you want to tell us a little bit? I think it's probably clear where the inspiration came from for the books. But yeah, if you want to go through kind of anything there, tell us a little bit about the books, why you've written them, what their purpose is.
I mean, you probably have got the inspiration for them, I get that. But I think it's also one of those things as a child bereavement specialist, I was recommending lots of books to different people, and there are some amazing books out there. Please don't make me think that there isn't, because there is some great books. But I was always finding that the books very much were sort of talking about animals or really nice cutesy type approaches to death and dying, and I just felt that there was a lack of books out there that really sort of explain what things are. And that sort of honest and real account. So I'd always got in my mind, I could write a book, I can write a book, I can write a children's book somewhere along the line. And we've all got a book in us, haven't we? So my sort of inspirational bit came during lockdown, really, where I was furloughed from the child bereavement charity I was working with at the time because my role had gone a little bit less sort of front line. And, in that really difficult post-pandemic situation, people had to make decisions. And I remember sitting on my hands thinking, this is when I should be out there doing this work, and I can't. So I thought, what could I do? So I put it to good use and then wrote, it's a collection of 3 books. I don't know why I did that as my first book. It was a really daft idea.
Because you're mad, Lorna, because you're mad.
Daft idea. But the idea is I sort of wrote a collection of books. I really I had this fabulous idea that a parent had died. So in the first book is sort of a mum has died. But there were 3 children of the family who were grieving differently because they were at different ages and stages of development and understanding, but then would allow them to be able to ask questions and answers, sort of ask questions that people don't really want to answer and don't know how to answer. So a lot of my books have a sort of a story part and then the sort of Q&A part where it's what's a funeral, what's cremation, do I have to go and view a body? Do I have to attend something? So all of those real and honest things that people go, I can't talk to anybody about that. Yeah, so my books are with a bit of a difference. They are quite niche, but I also know that they're really helpful in the right hands because it sort of demystifies lots of these sort of questions and answers. And more recently, following the death of my dog last year, I've written 2 books which are around pet loss, because again we do that as well. We have this bizarre approach to pet loss and children sometimes. So again, we talk about pet loss, but we talk about putting an animal down or putting them to sleep. Yeah. And language is so important when we're talking about death and dying. So we really want to make sure that children understand that putting to sleep doesn't mean that they're just going to wake up again, or putting them down. I mean, especially in your work, when you were working in a school, it's that bit, isn't it? About putting them down. It's almost like a bullying sort of tactic, isn't it? So why would we want to put an animal down, So again, most of my books are honest, real, but they do explore some of those really delicate and tender conversations in a way that gives information, but also allows a child to realise they're not alone, because children who are bereaved often think they're the only one. So that's where they come out. And 7 books, I don't know. And people still say to me now, have you written one about granddad? Have you written one about a dad? What about an auntie? What about an uncle? But actually, all of my books at the minute, it doesn't matter if it's saying goodbye to mum, it could be saying goodbye to dad. The principles are the same. But I think whilst people keep saying that they want them, I suppose I'm going to keep producing them, I think.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, you need to. You're doing good in the world, Lorna. So obviously that was kind of the intention and why you wanted to write them. Have you seen the impact that these books are having on people? What's the feedback that you're getting, or what are you seeing as a result of these?
I think everybody who writes a book wants to have some really nice feedback, don't they? Let's be fair. But for me, it's really difficult, isn't it? Because you're asking people to feedback at the most difficult times in their lives if they've had a significant bereavement. But I remember one particular family, go back one step. I actually said, as long as one family or one child feels better as a result, then all the hard work will be worth it. Obviously, some days I feel like it probably needs to be more than one child. But when you get that first review, if you like, someone reached out to me. They'd had a mum who had died of cancer. And they just wrote this really beautiful message to me just to say thank you very much. It allowed them just to sit as a family and talk about things that the dad hadn't really been aware of how to talk about. And I just think, job done. If it's changed one family's perception of how to explore death and dying and serious illness and honest and openness and empowerment of children and listening to their voice, do you know what? It's done its job, which is what spurs me on to continue to write resources, deliver training, write books, because we just got to get this message out, because it's not that people don't want to protect children or they don't want to help them. Sometimes around this subject, people just don't know how to. So, yeah.
Well, I say it can be quite a hard topic to face, but that's if you let it be, isn't it? And I think the more it's talked about, the more we talk about kind of death, dying, what it means. Maybe I'm a bit of a weird family. We talk about, well, for my grandma's funeral, we all made sure that we were wearing kind of bright clothes because it was a celebration of a life rather than a sad moment. And we've talked about what my mum wants at her funeral. I mean, even me with my kids, I'm like, you need to have a party. You need to be celebrating me. Like, don't be upset. Like, you celebrate how amazing I am. So yeah, we do talk about that and try and kind of make it into just an everyday, normal conversation.
Absolutely. No tomorrow is guaranteed. And it's that bit about living well and dying well and never being alone, isn't it? Which is a lovely little strapline from a hospice that I work in part-time. But it's that bit about, talking about it isn't going to kill you. But I'd love to be able to know. And I suppose my family get a bit sick of me going, well, do I know what you want? By the way, have you written that down? Have you done a will? Because so many things we can prepare for. There would be nothing worse than somebody in our family or our close circle that has died, and we just don't have a clue what they want.
Yeah.
Do they want to be buried? Do they want to be cremated? Do they want a celebration of life? Do they want everybody to be there absolutely howling because that's what they wanted? It's really difficult, and each to their own. And I think the funeral industry has changed so much considerably in the last 10 years, in particular, in the last 5 even more so. And I think people are recognizing you can do this differently. It doesn't have to be traditional. So there's some really interesting stories come out when I'm working with families, as you can imagine.
Yes, yeah. Well, yes. I mean, we're all weird and wonderful, aren't we? So in life and death, I guess. So yes, I can quite imagine that. So I think you've obviously kind of given a little bit there in terms of insights into the impact on children. But is there any other insights from your experiences of either working with families or even in terms of the book writing?
I think in terms of, I do feel like collectively as a society we need to be better at supporting children and young people generally, which is where my passion comes from. We know that it's believed that every 20 minutes a child is bereaved of a parent or a sibling.
Oh, wow.
That's stark stats in the UK, isn't it? But actually, we don't really know how many children and young people are impacted because there's no data collection. So if you go and you register a death, no one actually says to you, are there any dependent children? So we don't really know. We can only guesstimate from sort of various figures and bits and pieces. But equally, that when somebody has died, even if it's an expected death, that there is that sort of ripple and that community element to every single person's death. So we know that lots of children and young people are impacted. But there's some great work going on out there, some fabulous research happening at the moment, which really is starting to explore what children and young people need. We shouldn't have that children should be seen and not heard anymore. We know that if we start talking about some of this, then children get a better mental health outcome. But we also know that complicated grief can cause real difficulties for children and young people as they're growing up and into adulthood. So I think all of that is so important. But I also think grief education. Now, when I say grief education, I'm not just going to automatically say schools, because this does apply to families as well. But grief education, there is a huge campaign going on at the moment about how we talk about death and dying within the national curriculum, and should we start to be more open in terms of how we explore these really difficult subjects and sensitive subjects. I get it, we have to do it delicately and we have to do it sensitively, but we should be probably talking about and being more open. So there's some great work going on at the moment in terms of the needs of bereaved children, what we could do better, how we could bring grief education and grief literacy into workplaces and schools.
I like that term, grief literacy. Yeah.
Yeah, well, it is grief literacy, isn't it? It's that whole bit about not being frightened to say something. We have conversations with people based on we don't want to make things worse, but sometimes just ignoring something can make things worse. So, like I said, my work, I deliver training for National Children's Charity and in my own right as a freelance child bereavement specialist. But I genuinely feel that what we want to do is equip people to feel more comfortable. It's never going to be easy, but if we can equip people to feel more comfortable, then if you go back to work or if you go into school, then there's a great report from the UK Commission on Bereavement, and they talk about children and young people have the right to feel sensitively supported. And it's such a great term, isn't it?
Yeah, I like that.
What does that look like? With the pupils you were talking about earlier, that could be one thing. But for each child, that would be very, very individual.
Yeah.
We all have the right to feel sensitively supported in whatever we're doing. And I think that's where I sort of see a vision coming. Wouldn't it be great if we all just felt sensitively supported after a significant bereavement? Yeah. Did that answer your question?
I would probably be in a very different place. I can't even remember what question I asked Lorna, but it was great, whatever you said. I think it is important that we all, children and adults, are sensitively supported. And I know, kind of in situations I've been in within, well, I guess it was a bit of a mix, but I guess the more we talk about death, and I really love that term, grief literacy, because actually using the words, I mean, people probably use the word cancer more now than they did. It was always kind of the big C, wasn't it? And I guess the terms there are coming out more, and it probably is that actually the more we use the right words, well, in any context, but absolutely within a grief context, it just helps you to name what's happening, to be able to understand it.
Absolutely, but I think language is so important when we're talking about grief literacy. So I've worked with families where they will say, as a bit like I was saying earlier about putting a dog down or putting someone to sleep, but if you're talking about granddad's lost, we've lost granddad, children want to go, well, let's go and find him again.
Let's go find him,
Yeah, you lose your PE kit, you lose your keys. Grandma's gone to sleep. Well, then children might really struggle with going to sleep.
Up. Oh, well, yes, there's the,
also,
I don't want to go to sleep.
I don't want to go to sleep because I'm not going to come back. So, and we use sort of terminology like poorly, which is fine because I use that terminology when I'm talking to children and people, but it's about understanding that, a body has stopped working. So someone might feel poorly, but you can't fix a body. And so language and grief literacy in that element is so important. And then you've got to take people's culture and beliefs and everything else into account. And I totally understand that because, of course, different cultures have different religious elements to things, or it could just be a sort of traditions and customs. It depends on and that's my point. Every single one of this is individual. And there's a piece that I do when I'm sort of delivering training is you've got to take each individual story as it is, because you could have 2 9-year-old boys in front of you who both have had a bereavement because their mum has died by cancer, but their stories will be so different and their needs and their understanding might be really different, and the way that they're grieving could be different and the way they need to be supported is different. So,
and I guess a lot of that comes from previous experiences of, whether it's death or otherwise, different experiences in their past will impact a lot of how they deal with that situation and the support that they need.
Absolutely. So again, going back to sort of a bit of pet loss sort of theory in terms of that is if as a family you've had a pet loss or a death, because obviously there are lots of reasons how a pet can be rehomed and other bits and pieces, so there might be a loss in a different way. But if you've had those conversations and a child's been involved in a pet loss story, then they might build some resilience and understand about life cycles, beginning, middles and ends, birth, a life and a death. But if we haven't and we don't expose children to anything, and I know people say to me, oh, you can't expose them to, but there are so many opportunities in nature to just have a really quiet conversation about what alive means and what dead means. And sometimes we try and protect children so much that we almost forget to expose them to things. And I was talking to a family the other day, and they lived on a farm growing up, the children. So it's just second nature. It just is. And then you've got somebody else that go, oh no, I've got to replace the hamster because the hamster's died and I can't bear to tell them. So you have like this whole sort of line of people and everywhere in between and what people believe. So it's just about being a bit more open and a bit more honest. And children have an amazing capacity to deal with the truth, even down to how somebody has died. You don't have to tell children all, but you've got to give them pieces of the puzzle, because then they'll start to put it together and it'll make a bit of sense. And as I say to people, it's because it's their life story. We've got to help them build their own life story. And I've worked with numerous children that haven't been told the truth, and years later they've really struggled, really struggled.
Yeah. Do you do any work with children who are facing death themselves, or do you purely work with children who are bereaved?
My experience, when I first started to do my training, I did a 180-hour placement in a children's hospice. So all of those children were life limiting, and some were at end of life. There are so many amazing resources out there for supporting children in that way. So my trajectory of my career has sort of gone a bit more about supporting a sibling in those circumstances, or school children. So again, I might go into a school and have a conversation about how they can best remember a pupil or a member of staff or whoever. So less so, but the principles are all the same. And I try really hard to make sure in my own sort of CPD and learning that I never sort of forget that children might be the ones that are dying too. Again, there's a whole amount about that, and I do deliver some training around it, but it's that whole bit that people sometimes want to protect children in those circumstances, but the children tend to know a little bit more than we give them credit for. So it can be a lonely old place if you don't have information and support, can't it?
Yeah. Sorry, that was just taking me back to the student I mentioned earlier. I'd gone to see her in hospital, and I knew that she was dying, but her family hadn't told her at that point because they wanted to try and keep upbeat. And she'd said to me, when I get back to school, miss, will you help me to catch up with my maths? And I was just like, yes, yeah, I can do that. And that was really, really difficult. And that was just what had come into my head when we were talking about it.
And that is a family's choice and all of those other things. And like I said, you know, anything I've said here, please, anybody take it with the proviso that each situation is unique. And, you know, that's the whole point where you get sort of professionals involved. If you choose to do that, it's about exploring things from all different ways. Did she know? Did she not know? Yeah, well, I won't know. You won't know.
No,
sometimes
none of us will know. No.
But it's the same when I work in a hospice and people come in and they go, oh, they don't really know that they're dying. But do you know what they probably do? But again, we skirt around the issue.
It's probably not the done thing to say, like, do you know you're dying?
Well, we skirt around the issue. And someone was telling me a story this week, you know, that an older dad was dying in hospital and was saying, well, okay, you've just given me the news. Don't tell my son because he's quite sensitive. And then the son comes in and has a conversation with the doctor and says, oh, you know, I don't know what's happening, but if something is going wrong, don't tell dad because he's really sensitive. And what you've then got is this sort of, you're breeding this, nobody's really being honest and truthful. And I'm a bit more like, come on, let's all know it's coming towards the end. We don't know when our time to go is, but let's celebrate death as much as we celebrate life. You know, enjoy the time you've got. You don't have to be sad. You know, and I love it at the hospice. Sometimes I'll go in and people are having afternoon teas or the whole family are coming in and they're just cherishing those last moments and making good memories rather than all being worried about who's going to say what and who knows what. I know which I prefer when it's my turn to go.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, I think I'm probably on the same page. Just let's face it. Let's enjoy the moments we've got together, and just kind of celebrate those moments. I think that would be my way too. So what's your vision for the future then? Where do you see the books going? Have you got ideas for kind of further books or different work or anything else?
Yeah, the vision is, as I sort of alluded to earlier, I've been freelance for a year, so I'm still in that sort of fledgling stage of building a business. So each day I might have a different answer to this at the moment. However, there are 2 books on the horizon because people keep asking me. And the first is the Grandad book because that was already sort of in my head. But when our dog died last year, the pet loss one took a little bit of priority then. But the other book is people often ask me for sort of like a small I wish I knew what to say. So I've got this idea of having what I'm going to call a small handbook. I don't know quite what it'll look like yet, but it's just going to have that. So if someone is seriously ill and you've got a child in front of you, there's sort of the top 10 tips type approach. Because I think there's lots of people that would want to gift that to others.
Yeah.
And I also think there's a lot of great information out there, but sometimes having something that's tangible could be really helpful. So that's what this year's plan is. And then I have loads of training that I'm developing at the minute. The pet loss books are getting a lot of interest. So I'm doing some lunch and learns with some local vets because, vets don't always find it easy to talk about children who are impacted. So I've got loads of different things like going on around that. And the vision is to continue to make a career out of doing this without having to go back to full-time work in the same way on an employed basis, because I'm loving, and I mean genuinely loving, the opportunity that a day can come and someone can email me about something and I go, oh yeah, that's a really good idea. So that's where my head is at the minute, and the whole bit about compassionate communities. So there's a social movement about compassionate communities, that we should all be kind and caring and considerate around sort of illness, death and dying. And I'm sort of really looking at that from a child's perspective. So that's great. But what does that look like for a child in a compassionate community? How are they still sensitively supported? So yeah, I'm always open to everything. So the vision is not very clear, as you've probably guessed.
But to keep on helping people in as many ways as you possibly can.
Absolutely. Thank you. You could just be my marketing manager and that to everybody would be great. But yeah, exactly that. I think my passion is there to help and support. So it's about the best way of doing it.
Yeah. No, that's lovely. And I'm sure you've probably reached many, many more people doing what you're doing. I mean, I know you were helping many people previously, but do you find that you are able to kind of reach and help and support more people now you're doing your own thing in different ways?
I think I'm really focused quite a bit now on sort of training and developing training. So I love the idea that potentially people coming on a training course, I can upskill them to go away and be a bit more confident about they're not going to get it wrong. I always say best intentions, isn't it? If you've got the best intention when you're having a conversation with somebody or you're trying to work something out, but to be able to spread that word, especially in schools and education providers, there are so many things in school and education that can impact on a bereaved child. So being able to have that conversation with people to say, right, have you considered this in your classroom? Have you thought about that when you're having a discussion? Or when a bereaved child comes back to school, all you need to do is something like, isn't it, 5 7 seconds to say to them, I'm really sorry to hear that your dad died.
Okay, that's just giving me goosebumps. You just saying that it's, yeah. And I guess there's probably a lot of teachers that it's like, oh, I don't want to ask because I don't want to upset them. I want to try and keep the calm in the classroom. But yeah, I can imagine it would make the world of difference.
And the amount of times that I've been into a school where they go, oh yeah, no, they don't even mention them. No. And for some children, going back to school is a real normality and routine and all the other things, and it does take them away from something. But actually, even so, wouldn't it just be kindness just to, if you hear of anybody that's had a bereavement, it's just to, I'm sorry to hear about. People, there is a train of thought at the minute about not using I'm sorry, because of course you're not the one to blame, but you can use other words. I heard the news about your dad.
Yeah.
I'm here if you want to talk.
Do you think it's a British thing that we use the words I'm sorry?
Probably, yeah. There's a little campaign I've just seen on social media at the minute. Stop saying it. I mean, it's not something I tend to say, but I'll often use I'm sad to hear about, because I am sad for that person. I'm sad for you to hear about. Or my other one, which I try and encourage people to do, is that bit about I heard the news about your dad has died or your nan has died or whatever. Obviously you've just come back to school or to work or whatever the situation is, but perhaps we could have a coffee and you could tell me about them sometime, and also hear their name. If you're working with adults, or not just everybody, but I mean, it's really difficult for a child to go, so what was their name? And they will tell you, but sometimes they're always just going to be grandma or granddad and they don't know their real name. Yeah. But if you're working with a colleague, why wouldn't you just say, oh, what was their name? Because you just suddenly made
their memory alive as well, doesn't it? Yeah.
Well, you're talking about something that means so much to them. So kindness, compassion, yeah, all of the above really is so important, and for us to have conversations. And yeah, we have a huge amount of euphemisms. We have a huge amount of sort of stock words that we like to use. And that apology, you know, we don't need to apologize. What we just want to say to someone is, I'm thinking about you. Even that, I'm thinking about you.
I think that's what I tend to put on, like, oh, and I probably, maybe I do say, I'm really sorry to hear, I'm thinking of you, or sending lots of love and things like that. Well, that's more if I'm kind of doing it online rather than in person. But yeah, it'd be a bit weird if you're standing with someone, I'm sending lots of love to you.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm going to check myself that I make sure I don't say I'm sorry. And not that it's in the same kind of grief situation, but obviously I said before about kind of my youngest little one having Down syndrome, and we quite often talk about there's a grief period there when you get a diagnosis, and some people hate thinking about the fact that it's a grief period, and some people are like, but there's not a death. But actually in that instance, it's grief for what you thought was going to be is different. And there's a lot of work to try and get the medical staff to stop saying, I'm really sorry, your child has Down syndrome. And I guess it's in that, say, in a similar context, that it's not anything to be sorry about. Actually, it's just a fact that kind of, it is what it is.
Exactly. All of that, really.
Yeah, stop being too British.
Well, yes, and some cultures do things so differently, and you know, have like an open house, and just people get together and they're just celebrating that person or whatever. And I think we probably have got a little bit too clinical, haven't we? But that's another huge debate.
We could be here forever.
Funerals, that's a whole nother podcast.
Yeah, well, maybe you can come back on again another time.
Always.
So obviously we've talked about like the fact that you try and keep upbeat and things like that when you're kind of dealing with all things. How do you keep motivated what motivates you to kind of keep going, whether it's writing the books, because obviously they can be quite a long process, or whether it's just kind of keeping yourself going with working with the children in the different ways that you do?
I think the motivation comes from the passion of knowing that things need to change in society, because some people are great at talking about these subjects and some people are not. So there's still a lot of work to do to get that grief literacy in place. And I think my motivation probably comes from feedback from people. Is it from the books or from training or from a family where you've made a bit of a difference, where people go, oh, thank you. You know, because if you've helped somebody understand what it might look like from somebody else's perspective, then that's got to be my motivation. If I can just help make the difference so that a child, I don't want to get too political because I always end up sort of feeling really sorry for schools, but, you know, it means that a child goes back to school feeling supported by the adults around them, and they're not put in a class which is talking about war poems or death and dying and drama. And, you know, I can give you a massive number of examples of things that I've been told along the time and I've seen in things. It's just sometimes it's about just finding compassion and just thinking about that person on what they've been through, and just, it's the empathy, isn't it? I mean, it simply is empathy. So my motivation comes from hoping that everyone can empathise and make life just that little bit easier for somebody who is grieving. I think that's it.
No, that's brilliant. Do you have any tips for anyone if someone's thinking, right, I really want to go and make a difference about X? What would you suggest that they do?
So making a difference, I think, let's sort of take away from the subject matter. Myself making a difference last year, I am a firm believer that we're only here for a limited period of time. So yeah, I've gone back into that certain time, but we are, you know, we only have one life. So I know that this time last year, or probably 18 months ago, I realised that I needed to change things up. And I think one of the biggest things that I have learned in the last 12 months, 18 months, is we can all make an effect change. We can continue to accept day in, day out, but if you don't make change and have some dreams, because if someone had told me 5 years ago that I'd be on a podcast with you, Eleanor, talking about the fact that I've written 7 books, I'd be like, yeah, okay, because it's not reality. But actually, we all have it within ourselves to make most of what we're given and seize chances and opportunities. And it would be very easy last year for me to have said, I can't leave a very decent, well-paid job to, go off and decide what my dream is and work it all out. But you know what? You come into this life with nothing, you go out with nothing, and everything in between is what we make it. So, yeah. Does that answer that question?
Yeah, no, it really does. It's a bit. So I think to sum it up, I guess it starts with self-reflection. What is it that you want to do? And do you need to make some changes in order to make that happen? I guess.
And seizing those opportunities. I think, the little imposter syndrome has definitely come in for me over the last few months. And I think, I'm not sure. But if you just seize an opportunity, I've just had an opportunity to go on national TV. And if someone again had said that, I could sit and go, oh no, I don't want to do it. And it's live TV and all of those other things. But I was like, no, come on, I've got to find some courage. So find some courage, find what you really want to do in the world. And, opportunities, they're out there. So you can always affect change.
Absolutely. Thank you. So to kind of come to a conclusion with, can you tell us something fun or interesting about yourself?
Okay. I'd love to say something fun and interesting with myself, but I'm going to tell you a little strange. Yeah, it's a really strange little story, basically, but it always makes me smile. So I used to work with the British Army. So I used to do youth and community work, and I worked at a barracks which had just started a little scrapbook. So they took over this barracks area from an RAF base. So 4 families to start off with, and then ended up with lots. And I was the community development worker, so I used to do this little scrapbook of everything that had happened. And I kept this scrapbook, and then years later, and I'm talking years later, when I was just about to leave, I met my husband who worked on the barracks. But the first time I sort of saw him, I go, I've got this really great scrapbook that I've been doing for the last 10 years, all about the history of this place and how it opened. And then I opened the first page and there was a picture of him, and I'd never met him before.
Oh,
so
wow.
My strange little thing is that I had a picture of my husband in my scrapbook for 10 years, having not even met him. There you go.
Oh, wow. Wow. That's amazing. I didn't know that story.
No, it's just come to mind, and it just makes me smile. So yeah.
I thought it was bizarre that me and my husband had been on a degree together for 3 years before we actually kind of knew each other. So we'd been in lecture theatres every day for 3 years, but hadn't really noticed each other until the end of the degree. But 10 years. Wow. Okay, that's something.
and interesting, isn't it? We talk about chance and opportunity. Hey. It does make you wonder, doesn't it? You and your husband, mine and my husband. Yeah. Interesting time.
Everything happens for a reason.
It just makes me smile that I had a pin-up of him before I even met him. There you go.
It's like a mini celebrity.
It is, yeah. You just didn't realise it.
So I think you've covered lots of things in here, and it's all been really helpful in terms of if you're wanting to work with children, kind of things to bear in mind. What's the one key thing that someone can take away from this if they come across or working with, I guess, a child or adult, but specifically children who are dealing with a bereavement?
I think just talking with that child, not being afraid to acknowledge that they've had a bereavement is the first thing. And the second thing is just making sure that children have open, honest, clear, age-appropriate information that allows them to make decisions about what would work for them in their grief. Because I think, be it going to a funeral, be it talking about that person, deciding what their memories are going to be for that person, if we include children and give them their voice, then they'll do what's right for them. And that will absolutely help children and young people in a longer term. Now, they might choose not to do anything, and that's fine too, but if we listen to them, we've given them choice and understanding, then we will never go far wrong. And as I've said, children have an amazing capacity to deal with bereavement. We just got to give them the tools in order to help them do it.
Love that. Thank you. So if anybody wants to find more about you, your bereavement work, your books, where's the best place that they can find you?
So I have my own website, so lornavyse.com. I have loads of different things on there. So some resources, some blogs, some information, some downloads, and obviously a shop, because, you know, the best thing to say is buy all of the books. If you know, and people say to me, actually, the books are just for children. I have sort of written them so adults can learn a lot from them as well. So they are really useful for sort of lots of different settings. So if you don't know how to have a conversation with children, go to there. And there's lots of information on my website that'll get people started.
Fabulous. Thank you. And I'll make sure that all of the information is in the little blurb with the podcast as well, so people can find you. So yeah, just to finish off, thank you so much, Lorna, for coming on and talking to us about the cheery subject of death. Who knew it could be such an uplifting topic to talk about in all the positivity? So thank you. I really appreciate you coming to talk to us about that today.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Changemakers with Eleanor. I hope you're leaving as inspired as I am. If today's story has sparked something in you, remember it's never too late to start making a difference. Whether it's writing that book you've always dreamed of, stepping up in your community, or starting that campaign you're passionate about. If you enjoyed our time together, please consider giving us a rating and review on your favourite podcast platform, and share this episode with someone who could use a little inspiration. Your support helps us to reach more changemakers just like you. Join me, Eleanor, in the next episode for another deep dive into the stories of those who dare to dream big. Until then, be your greatest. See you next time.